Welcome to English Podcast 360 Degrees. Dive into today's episode with our free PDF featuring essential vocabulary, practical dialogues, and answers to the 3 key comprehension questions. Don't miss out, subscribe, like, and join the conversation in the comments below. Hi everyone. Welcome back to our podcast. Today, Emma and I are going to discuss a common issue many English learners face: overusing a single word in different contexts. But before we dive into that, we need to talk about a fundamental issue that underlies many language learning challenges. How was your weekend, Emma?
It was fantastic, Ryan. But you're right, there's a bigger picture we need to address. Many learners struggle with not just vocabulary, but fluency in general. This often stems from an imbalance in how they practice and learn, focusing too much on receptive activities and not enough on productive activities.
Exactly. Receptive learning involves activities like listening and reading, which are certainly important. However, without enough productive practice, such as speaking and writing, learners find it difficult to express themselves fluently.
Right. The education system often emphasizes receptive skills, like listening to lectures and reading texts, but neglects the productive side. This leads to an understanding of the language without the ability to use it effectively in real conversations.
Studies suggest that a more effective ratio would be 3 parts receptive learning to 7 parts productive practice. Yet, most learners do the opposite, heavily focusing on receptive activities.
Absolutely. To really master a language, you need to practice producing it. That means more speaking and writing, engaging in conversations, using new vocabulary and context, and testing your ability to form coherent thoughts on the fly.
This ties directly into our topic today. By improving our productive skills, not only do we enhance our fluency, but we also diversify our vocabulary use. Instead of repeating the same word, we can explore synonyms and alternative expressions.
Exactly. So today, we'll help you expand your vocabulary and improve your fluency by providing alternatives to commonly overused words. Let's get started. Oh, you asked me about my weekend, Rayan?
Yeah.
It was fantastic, Rayan. I visited an incredible mountain resort.
That sounds fascinating. Which resort did you go to?
I went to Aspen. The scenery was absolutely breathtaking.
Sounds like you had an amazing time. What did you do there?
We stayed at a wonderful lodge and enjoyed some delightful meals. The ambiance was just perfect.
Wow, everything sounds magnificent. The view must have been extraordinary.
Yes, the view was absolutely extraordinary. And we met some really charming people. It was an unforgettable experience.
That's wonderful, Emma. Now, I noticed you used a variety of vocabulary instead of repeating the same word over and over again. This is a challenge many English learners struggle with, don't you think?
Absolutely, Rayan. Overusing a single word can make speech sound repetitive and dull. It's important to have a rich vocabulary to express yourself more accurately and keep conversations interesting.
Exactly. For instance, if we keep saying nice for everything, it doesn't convey the true meaning or the nuances. So today, we're going to talk about some alternatives to common, overused words. Let's start with one such word that is often overused.
Right, one common word we tend to overuse is nice. We hear it all the time: nice weather, nice day, nice meal. But there are so many other words we can use instead.
That's right. For example, instead of saying nice, you could say pleasant. For instance, this room is pleasant, or what a pleasant evening.
Exactly. And another great alternative is agreeable, which means enjoyable or satisfactory. You could say, this is an agreeable book, or the weather was quite agreeable today.
Yes, and for something even more positive, you might use kind. You could say, she is a kind person, or his gesture was very kind.
Good point, Rayan. And don't forget about friendly, which is perfect for describing someone who is warm and approachable. You can use it for people or environments, like the staff was very friendly, or it's a friendly neighborhood.
Using a variety of words not only makes your language richer, but also more precise. It shows that you have a broad vocabulary and can express yourself more clearly.
Let's give our listeners some practice. Imagine you're describing a pleasant evening. Instead of saying nice evening, you could say pleasant evening or delightful evening.
That's a great exercise, Emma. How about describing a friendly atmosphere? Instead of nice atmosphere, try saying agreeable atmosphere or welcoming atmosphere.
Exactly. Practicing these alternatives helps you become more fluent and expressive in English. Now, let's move on to another commonly overused word, bad.
Yes, bad is often used, but we have many other expressive options. Instead of saying bad, you could say terrible. For instance, the weather was terrible.
Another alternative is awful. For example, the food was awful. It conveys a strong negative emotion.
And let's not forget horrible. You might say, that movie was horrible. It's a strong word that leaves no doubt about your opinion.
Another one is dreadful. For instance, the service was dreadful. It implies something very negative and unpleasant.
Let's continue our exploration of commonly overused words. We've talked about alternatives for nice and bad. Now, let's move on to interesting.
Yes, interesting is a word we often use, but there are more expressive options. One alternative is fascinating. For example, the documentary was fascinating.
Another great option is engaging. For instance, the lecture was very engaging. It suggests that something holds your attention.
And how about captivating? You might say, her performance was captivating. It implies that it drew you in completely.
Another word you could use is intriguing. For example, the mystery novel was intriguing. It suggests that it piqued your curiosity.
Exactly. Using varied vocabulary makes your speech more dynamic and interesting for your listeners.
Now, let's discuss another overused word, great. Instead of saying great, you could say excellent. For instance, the service at the restaurant was excellent.
Another alternative is outstanding. For example, he did an outstanding job on the project. It implies something was done exceptionally well.
And don't forget superb. You could say, the food was superb. It indicates the highest quality.
Another one is fantastic. For instance, we had a fantastic time at the concert. It suggests a wonderful and enjoyable experience.
Let's give our listeners some practice. Imagine you're describing a captivating book. Instead of saying interesting book, you could say fascinating book or engaging read.
That's a great exercise, Rayan. How about describing an excellent performance? Instead of great performance, try saying outstanding performance or superb act.
Exactly. Practicing these alternatives helps you become more fluent and expressive in English. Now, let's move on to another commonly overused word, very.
Yes, very is often used to intensify adjectives, but we have more specific and impactful words. Instead of saying very hot, you could say extremely hot.
Another alternative is incredibly. For example, the movie was incredibly good. It adds a strong emphasis.
And how about highly? You might say she is highly skilled. It suggests a high degree of skill.
Another word you could use is remarkably. For example, the test was remarkably easy. It implies something unusual or unexpected.
Using these alternatives makes your language more precise and impactful.
Now that we've covered alternatives for nice, bad, interesting, and great, let's move on to another overused word, awesome. Instead of saying awesome, you could say amazing. For instance, the show was amazing.
Another alternative is incredible. For example, the view from the top was incredible. It suggests something beyond ordinary.
And don't forget fantastic. You could say, the party was fantastic. It indicates a wonderful and enjoyable event.
Another one is marvelous. For instance, we had a marvelous time on our trip. It suggests a delightful and memorable experience.
Let's continue with our vocabulary upgrade. We've covered alternatives for nice, bad, interesting, great, and awesome. Now, let's discuss another word we often overuse, important.
Yes, important is frequently used, but there are many other expressive words we can use. One alternative is essential. For example, it's essential to bring your ID to the event.
Another great option is significant. For instance, the research yielded significant results. It highlights the importance and impact.
And how about crucial? You might say it's crucial to meet the deadline. It conveys that something is extremely important.
Another word you could use is vital. For example, water is vital for survival. It suggests that something is necessary for life or success.
Using varied vocabulary makes your speech more dynamic and precise. Now, let's move on to another overused word, happy.
Yes, happy is a common word, but we have more expressive options. Instead of saying happy, you could say joyful. For instance, the children were joyful at the party.
Another alternative is content. For example, she felt content after finishing her work. It implies a deep sense of satisfaction.
And how about elated? You might say, he was elated with his exam results. It suggests a high level of happiness and excitement.
Another word you could use is pleased. For example, I am pleased with the progress we've made. It indicates a positive feeling of satisfaction.
Let's give our listeners some practice. Imagine you're describing a joyful occasion. Instead of saying happy day, you could say joyful day or elated moment.
That's a great exercise, Rayan. How about describing a vital component? Instead of important part, try saying essential part or crucial element.
Exactly. Practicing these alternatives helps you become more fluent and expressive in English. Now, let's move on to another overused word, sad.
Yes, sad is often used, but we have many other expressive words. Instead of saying sad, you could say unhappy. For instance, she felt unhappy with the outcome.
Another alternative is downcast. For example, he looked downcast after hearing the news. It conveys a deeper sense of sadness.
And how about miserable? You might say, the rainy weather made everyone feel miserable. It suggests a strong sense of unhappiness.
Another word you could use is depressed. For example, he has been feeling depressed lately. It indicates a more severe form of sadness.
Using these alternatives makes your language more precise and impactful.
Let's continue with our vocabulary upgrade. We've covered alternatives for nice, bad, interesting, great, awesome, important, happy, and sad. Now, let's discuss another word we often overuse, unique.
Yes, unique is frequently used, but there are many other expressive words we can use. One alternative is distinctive. For example, her style is very distinctive.
Another great option is one of a kind. For instance, he has a one-of-a-kind talent. It highlights how exceptional and rare something is.
And how about special? You might say, this ring is special to me. It conveys that something has personal significance.
Another word you could use is uncommon. For example, it's an uncommon sight in this area. It suggests that something is rare and not often seen.
Using varied vocabulary makes your speech more dynamic and precise. Now, let's move on to another overused word, literally.
Yes, literally is a word we often use to emphasize, but there are more accurate options. Instead of saying literally, you could say actually. For instance, he actually completed the marathon.
Another alternative is truly. For example, she is truly talented. It conveys a sense of authenticity.
And how about really? You might say, I really enjoyed the show. It's a simple yet effective way to express genuine feelings.
Another word you could use is precisely. For example, that's precisely what I meant. It indicates exactness.
Let's give our listeners some practice. Imagine you're describing a distinctive feature. Instead of saying unique feature, you could say distinctive characteristic or special trait.
That's a great exercise, Rayan. How about describing an exact fact? Instead of literally, try saying actually or precisely.
Exactly. Practicing these alternatives helps you become more fluent and expressive in English. Now, let's move on to another overused word, good.
Yes, good is a common word. But we have many other expressive options. Instead of saying good, you could say excellent. For instance, she did an excellent job.
Another alternative is wonderful. For example, we had a wonderful time. It implies a very positive experience.
And how about fantastic? You might say, the movie was fantastic. It suggests something was highly enjoyable.
Another word you could use is superb. For example, the meal was superb. It indicates something of the highest quality.
Using these alternatives makes your language more precise and impactful. Now that we've covered alternatives for unique, literally, and good, let's move on to another overused word, great.
Yes, we often use great, but there are more expressive words. Instead of saying great, you could say outstanding. For instance, the presentation was outstanding.
Another alternative is remarkable. For example, his performance was remarkable. It implies that it was very impressive.
Let's wrap up our discussion. We've covered a lot of ground today, exploring alternatives to commonly overused words like nice, bad, interesting, great, awesome, important, happy, sad, unique, literally, and good.
Absolutely. By using a richer vocabulary, you not only make your language more engaging, but also express your thoughts more clearly and precisely. Remember, practice makes perfect. Keep experimenting with new words and phrases.
And don't forget to integrate these new words into your daily conversations. The more you use them, the more natural they'll become. Now, let's explore some essential vocabulary related to our topic.
Program you're about to listen to is English Podcast 360 Degrees, 10-minute English.
To further enhance your vocabulary, here are some additional words that can be used as alternatives. Nice, charming, lovely, pleasing. Example, the little cottage was charming and cozy. Bad, atrocious, appalling, horrendous. Example, the traffic was absolutely horrendous during rush hour. Interesting, thought-provoking, enthralling, absorbing. Example, the book was thought-provoking and made me reconsider my views. Great, exceptional, superlative, splendid. Example, his performance was exceptional and received a standing ovation. Awesome, stunning, astounding, breathtaking. Example, the view from the mountain was absolutely breathtaking. Important, imperative, pivotal, paramount. Example, it's imperative to submit your application before the deadline. Happy, gleeful, contented, blissful. Example, she felt blissful as she walked through the serene garden. Sad, melancholic, sorrowful, heartbroken. Example, he was heartbroken when he heard the news. Unique, singular, rare, unparalleled. Example, her artistic style is unparalleled and truly one of a kind. Literally, veritably, genuinely, authentically. Example, he was genuinely thrilled about his promotion. Good, admirable, commendable, exemplary. Example, her dedication to volunteer work is truly commendable. These additional terms will help you articulate your thoughts even more effectively. Remember, practicing and using these words in your daily conversations will make them feel more natural.
Now that we've talked about a variety of alternatives for overused words, let's put this into practice. We'll give you some sentences with overused words, and your task is to replace them with more precise terms from our discussion. She had a nice time at the party. Your turn. She had a time at the party. Pleasant or delightful? The weather was bad yesterday. Your turn. The weather was yesterday. Terrible or awful? He gave a great presentation. Your turn. He gave an presentation. outstanding, or remarkable. Thanks for joining us today. Remember to share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you.